It is preview season here on Armchair Analysis, and today we're talking about the Illinois Fighting Illini. What can they be in 2025? Are they last year's Indiana? We'll talk about all that and more here on today's episode. Welcome in. It's July 27th. It's going to be an 8 p.m. episode, a late night episode, and this is a little bit of a test. To see kind of how we can do things later on down the line throughout the playing season when we get to Saturdays and Sundays, but this is also just making up for missed time on a video the other day. So today it's all about Illinois, but I do ask that if you're new around here, you leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Subscribe specifically. We're trying to hit 150 subscribers, and as of right now, or at least as of my last check, we're at 146. We're trying to hit 150 by the end of the month of July. At this point, we have basically 3 days to get it done, and I think we can certainly do that. As a matter of fact, we still got 4 days to get it done, so I think we can get it done. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in, all the support. But let's go ahead and get into Illinois in 2025. This is a team that won 10 games last year, of course, winning that bowl game against South Carolina. 10-3, 6-3 in Big Ten play, and they were super impressive. I think they did a really good job last year of building things up. Brett Bielema has done a really good job of building things up out here in Champaign. Team scored 28.3 points per game last year. It was 65th in college football, but they only allowed 21.7. That was 31st. A turnover margin of plus 0.2. That was 51st in college football. They were pretty, I don't want to say average. They were above average. They took advantage of, and I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly before, rather than speaking out of term, but I would say it is correct. I mean, they took advantage of a relatively light schedule last year. They had it relatively easy. The games that they lost were games they should have lost, and the games that they won were games they should have won based on the way last year went. This year, it turns around a little bit. It looks a little different in the schedule, but this team is what everybody's deciphering and calling the 2025 Indiana, the team that comes out of nowhere and makes a playoff run. I'm going to disagree with that for one reason, and it's not because I don't think they can make the run. It's because if they were last year's Indiana, nobody would be talking about them. Indiana last year, everybody was, hey, we don't know what this team's going to be. As a matter of fact, nobody really had an idea what Indiana was last year or if they would even be good. A lot of people doubted this Indiana team last year. Illinois, on the other hand, everybody's calling them for the playoff already. So how are they last year's Indiana? It's a question I don't really have a great answer for. What I will say, though, is they do set up really well to make a run at the playoff should they want to. They're coming off of a 47th ranked recruiting class, a 43rd overall portal class, which isn't great. They only brought in 18 commitments, but they did enough. They did what they needed to do, address what they needed to address, and now they get to come back in. And by the way, their defense pretty much pulled everybody from Wisconsin, which was a pretty solid defense last year. So it'll be a pretty interesting spot to look at. Brett Bielema walks into year 4 as the head coach of the Fighting Illini. You got Barry Looney Jr., Aaron Henry, as the offensive and defensive coordinators, respectively. 9 returning starters from last year's offense to include all 5 offensive line starters. That is huge if you're Illinois this year. This team graded pretty well, and they're in the Power 4. They were 33rd in run blocking grade at 64. Their pass block grade was 64.9. That was 47th. They did enough, and they continue to do enough. It's a little interesting because they lose Josh McCray. He transfers out to Georgia, and now they're going to look to Aiden Lawfrey, Caden Fagan, and even Khalil Valentine, I think, is going to get some playing time. He's a guy that I'm really excited to see how he kind of gets brought into this offense a little bit. He is going to be, I think, a name to watch this year as maybe even a guy that eventually takes over the starting running back job. I'm very high on Khalil Valentine. It seems like the program is themselves. A lot of writers, a lot of people are talking about him as a guy to maybe step in as they're close to the program. When you look at the wide receiver position, it's Malik Elzy, Hank Beatty, Colin Dixon, and they also bring in Hudson Clement from West Virginia, which is a really underrated addition in the wide receiver room. They also bring back Tanner Arkin. He was a starter last year at tight end. This is a team that if the wide receiver position works out the way they're expecting it to, The run game continues to be successful the way they expect it to. And Luke Altmaier plays at the high level that everybody expects him to. This is a team that certainly can do a lot of good on offense, and I think they can do a lot of good all throughout this season. Defensively, they bring back 7 starters, but they were a team that allowed 5.4 yards per play last year. That was 61st in college football. They dropped that number down to 5 yards per play allowed over their last 3. But those last 3 include the bowl game with South Carolina, but were Rutgers, Northwestern, and South Carolina. And they still gave up 5 yards per play in, really, they gave up more in the games that they had less time to prepare for. How can that translate into this year? How can they maybe improve off of that and potentially put themselves in a better position to compete? Because truth be told, you're not going to compete with 5 yards per play allowed. The schedule this year is a lot more difficult. They have better teams, I think, on the schedule versus last year. You can't get away with that every single week. They bring in transfers James Thompson Jr., Kurt Neal, and Leon Lowry Jr., all 3 of them from Wisconsin. And then they bring in, I got to look elsewhere because I, again, cannot read my own handwriting, but I think it's Tamina Durajai. Maybe I got that right. Maybe I didn't. A defensive end from Florida State. Not great with name pronunciation, and I apologize. You look at the leaders returning from last year. You got Gabe Jacas, who leads really the majority of categories. Tackles for loss, sacks, forced fumbles. He had 74 tackles, 13 of those for loss, 8 sacks last year, which is incredible for an outside linebacker, but he's more of a pass rushing threat. 3 forced fumbles. Xavier Scott led the team in interceptions with 4, but they bring back pretty much everybody in the secondary. This was a team that forced 12 interceptions last year and had 15 forced fumbles. They're expecting to continue to create issues for opposing offenses, whether that's in the pass rush game or in the ability to create interceptions. Again, I look at names to watch, and it's Khalil Valentine for me, the running back. I've already talked about him, and I expect some really big things from him this year. Other things that I watch is how do teams attack the secondary, and how can the secondary create problems. The more they can do, the better they can be in pass coverage, which is something they were really good at last year. The more opportunities they create for turnovers, whether that's poor decision-making from quarterbacks, whether that's pass rush getting in and creating forced fumbles or just creating longer down and distance. This team, I think, has a really good potential to create a lot of havoc for opposing teams and be really good. Now, the biggest thing for me is they play a lot of really good teams on the schedule as well. And that's something that I think we have yet to really determine who they are or what they can be going forward from there. So with everything said and done here, let's go ahead and take a look at this schedule for Illinois in 2025. And it all begins with a game against Western Illinois, but then they take that road trip down to Wallace Wade Stadium. They'll face the Duke Blue Devils. We'll then move on, Western Michigan, a road trip to Indiana, road trip to Purdue, include Washington and Wisconsin on those road trips for the 2025 season. Hosting USC and Ohio State, that's an interesting couple of games. Then you got Rutgers, Maryland, and Northwestern, which you should certainly be favored in. Probably favored in probably 7 or 8 out of the 12 games you play, if I were to guess. So with that said, they sit at an over-under of 8.5, plus 4,100 odds to win the Big Ten, and plus 18,000 to win a national championship. This team, let's go ahead and preview and predict the schedule. They're going to start with that win over Western Illinois. I shouldn't have to explain too much. It's going to be just kind of a figure out where you're at and move forward with the season. You move on to that road trip to Durham and face Duke in week 2. And I think that's going to be an interesting game because, you know, when you look at it from face value, Illinois looks like the more experienced and better team. But when you look at it even closer, Brett Bielema and Manny Diaz are 2 great coaches. I don't want to say great, but they're 2 really good coaches who emphasize defense. When you look at this game and you look at Darian Mensah versus Luke Altmaier, when you look at the wide receiver rooms of both these teams, the running back rooms of both these teams, I know Jaquez Moore back for Duke this year. When you look at all those things, I mean, it's really hard for me to not take Duke here at home in this game. However, that's exactly what's going to happen. I am taking Illinois to win this game. It's going to be close. It's going to be a really fun game. This is kind of a quiet, sneaky, must-watch game in week 2. You move on, get a win over Western Michigan. You start 3-0 before you go on the road and face Indiana in Bloomington. And that's where the first loss is going to come. I think that Fernando Mendoza adds an element to this Indiana offense at the quarterback position, specifically ability to run. It's going to help them out a lot. I think that along with that, Mikael Kamara coming back, going to be interesting to watch the Indiana defense come to play and how they work out. We got an Indiana preview actually coming up here very soon on the channel. As a matter of fact, it might be the next Big Ten team we do. I can go ahead and tell you it is, well, it's not, but it should be. It's Penn State next, but Indiana is going to be the next Big Ten after Penn State. And, you know, this is a team that has a lot of intrigue to them and a lot of ability, I think, to replicate last season's success. They'll be interesting. I think they're going to get a win at home against Illinois. You move on the next week and face USC at home, and I think this one's going to be a matter of a couple of different things. I think this game being in Champaign is a little bit of a game changer here. I'm kind of waffling on my pick as we speak. So understand that that's kind of, like, I do put a lot of thought into these, and it's probably going to change maybe one more time. Right now I'm taking USC to win. I just think the talent level, especially in the receiver room, kind of the talk of this game is going to be USC's receiver room versus the Illinois secondary. If USC can gain success passing the ball, if Jade Mayovic can take care of the football, Trojans might win this game. Should that not happen, it's going to be an Illinois win, and it's going to be an easy Illinois win. I see no other way for this game to go other than an Illinois close loss or an Illinois win, whether it's comfortable or not. They'll get back in the win column with a win over Purdue on the road in Ross-Ade Stadium. Typically an upset spot, but year 1 under Barry Odom, they can make some things happen, but it'll be interesting to watch. Get a home game against Ohio State on October 11th, and, you know, this game kind of reminds me of the 2007 Ohio State-Illinois game, and I think we all remember that game. Experienced quarterback in Juice Williams, Rashard Mendenhall, part of that team. This Illinois team was kind of looking for that opportunity. Ohio State walking into Champaign with an inexperienced quarterback. At the time, it was Todd Beckman. Now it is Julian Sayin, or at least expected to be Julian Sayin. The difference maker here is they did not have a generational wide receiver. They had some good receivers back then. Brian Robisky, I think Brian Hartline was still a part of that team at the time. Dane Sanzenbacher, I think, was at tight end. I mean, that Ohio State team still went and played for a national championship. This game feels like Illinois could pull off the win. I'm not picking that. I'm taking Ohio State to win just for the outright talent differential. Could be a fun game. Heart can outplay talent. That's going to be a fun game to watch. Take a road trip to Seattle and take loss number 4. I think that this Washington team is in my mind, this is last year's Indiana. Washington is really good and not talked about. That, to me, would be last year's Indiana. I like what they bring to the table. I predicted them 9-3. If you haven't seen that video, you can go back and check it out. Playlist is on the channel. But Washington will get the win. You'll go on and beat Rutgers and Maryland. Maryland, I still have 2-10. I really don't have a whole lot of high hopes, high expectations for what they are. This is a rebuild year and a big one. We'll see what happens with them. Rutgers, on the other hand, a good team, just not better, I don't think, than this Illinois team. You go on the road to Wisconsin. Earlier in preview season, I predicted Wisconsin to win this game. Not today. I'm taking Illinois. Just looking more at Wisconsin and what they are is not very good. A team that I think has a lot of question marks surrounding them and their future as a program. Illinois will get the win there. They'll also beat Northwestern at home to move on. Finishing 8-4, 5-4. I'm really willing to bump that up to 9-3, 6-3, which would be an absolute complete repeat of last year. And yeah, that would certainly be disappointing given all that they returned, but I think that that's kind of where this team is right now. I think that's where their ceiling lands, especially in a schedule like this. You put them up against last year's schedule where you only play Michigan, Oregon, and Penn State on the road. And Minnesota again. I mean, you probably go 8-4 with last year's schedule because of how much the other teams around it improved as well. I think that 8-4 just kind of is where Illinois is at for right now. And again, 9-3, I'm willing to bump 9-3 out there. I just think that's kind of where they stand right now. It's not really a dig. It's not really a lack of belief because I believe they're going to be a good team. I think they have potential to win a lot of games and be 10-2, 11-1, and maybe put themselves in playoff contention. But I'm not in the business of bold predictions. I'm certainly not in the business of telling you things that I don't believe myself. So with that said, 8-4, 5-4 is what we got this year. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Always happy to have these conversations. Remember, please leave a like, subscribe. We're trying to hit 150. We're 4 away. We can do that in 4 days. I think certainly with you guys and your support, we can get that done. So I thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have a great rest of your night. We'll see you guys tomorrow. The Tennessee Volunteers 2025 season preview is on deck. Don't miss out.